Black waitress found him bleeding and protecting his newborn, unaware he is the Korean mafia boss. The alley behind Marlene's diner smelled of wet cardboard, old grease, and the metallic bite of rust. Atlanta's warehouse district at its truest, its ugliest. At 2:47 a.m., the world felt hollowed out, a place where only shadows breathed as rain fell steadily. Aaliyah almost didn't see him at first, just a huddled shape beside the dumpster. But then the sound reached her, soft, high, trembling. A newborn's cry, thin as thread. She froze. Then she stepped closer. The man's white dress shirt clung to him in wet transparency, the kind of fabric rich men wore to boardrooms and steak lunches. Now it was soaked through with blood, blooming in jagged, ugly bursts. He slumped sideways, back scraping against the dented metal of the dumpster, a baby pressed to his chest, as if she were the last warm thing on earth. Aaliyah's breath hitched. Not fear, instinct, recognition. Motherhood never stopped being a reflex. She knelt, knees sinking into cold asphalt. The baby was tiny, days old at most, her skin flushed and fragile, her mouth opening in hungry, confused mules. Aaliyah reached out, hands steady despite the jolt of adrenaline tearing through her veins. The man's eyes opened, dark, burning slow like coals. Pain lived there, but so did something sharper, resolve maybe, or fear. It was hard to tell in the shadows. "Please," he whispered, voice scraping. "Not me. Save her. Just save her." The way he looked at her, like she was the final card in a losing hand, made her chest tighten. She slipped the baby into her arms, the weight shockingly small, too small. Her brain cataloged facts automatically. Blue lips? No. Breathing? Yes. Warm enough? Barely. She needed out of this alley now. Her gaze dropped to the man's wound. Gunshot, close range. She'd served enough cops and amateur tough guys to recognize the pattern. Blood pulsed through his fingers, each beat weaker than the last. Aaliyah pressed her apron against the wound, fabric saturating in seconds. Her phone was already in her hand, thumb hovering over 911. "Hospital," she murmured, more to herself than him. "You need—" "No." His hand shot out, grip trembling, icy. "No hospital. They'll take her. They'll kill us both." Aaliyah's pulse hammered in her ears. Rain slicked her hair to her cheeks, cold seeping through her jacket. The alley suddenly felt too quiet, like they weren't alone. Like danger hovered just beyond the spill of yellow light from the diner's back door. She thought of Jordan asleep at home, of rent due on the 15th, of the arthritis flaring in her fingers every morning, of how she was too old and too tired for someone else's nightmare. But then the baby whimpered again, a weak, desperate sound, and something inside Aaliyah cracked open. A memory flashed, Jordan's first night home, tiny fists waving, her own terror at failing him. "Okay," she heard herself say, voice low, sure. "Okay, but we're moving, now." She gathered the baby closer, stood and reached for the dying man with her free hand, because walking away wasn't in her nature. Not when a child was crying in the dark. The hallway to Aaliyah's apartment felt longer tonight, narrow, dim, flickering with that same dying fluorescent buzz that always made her think of hospitals. Hospitals and the long nights she'd spent there when Jordan was a baby, praying he'd make it through a bronchial infection doctors said was mild, even though he'd gasped for breath like the world was closing in around him. That panic, old, buried, rose up again now as she fumbled with her keys, one arm bracing the half-conscious man slung against her side, the other holding the baby tight against her chest. Her hand slipped, her breath fogged in the cold hallway. A wet, metallic smell clung to her clothes, Jin's blood drying in tacky streaks. Focus. Get them inside. The lock finally clicked. She pushed the door open with her shoulder and guided them in. Warmth hit her instantly, thin warmth, electric warmth, but still a relief. Her apartment always ran on the edge of cold because the building's heating system was older than she was. But compared to the alley, the rain, the danger outside, it felt like stepping into another world. 2 bedrooms, 1 cramped living room, a kitchenette with peeling laminate and cabinets that stuck when humidity rose. Half the units in this building were empty now. Too many break-ins, too many lost jobs, too many people giving up and moving on. But this space was hers. Hard-earned, paid for in aching joints and double shifts and resilience she'd built over years of fighting through exhaustion. Tonight, it was a temporary sanctuary. She lowered Jin gently onto her couch, faded brown upholstery she'd patched twice and sworn she'd replace someday. His breath stuttered as she helped him lie back. His eyes opened in ragged slits, glazed with pain but still focused on her, still aware of the stakes. The baby stirred in her arms, a soft, warm weight, her cheeks flushed with cold, her tiny lips parting in confusion. Aaliyah knelt and laid her in a nest of blankets on the floor, positioning her where she could see every rise and fall of that fragile chest. Safety first. Always safety first. Then Aaliyah turned back to Jin. The blood had spread through his shirt, a deep, soaked stain across the right shoulder, too close to the artery, too close for comfort. His face was chalk pale, breath shallow. Sweat formed at his hairline despite the cold. "I need to get the bullet out," she murmured under her breath. "I need to do something or you're going to die." His eyes fluttered open. "Baby," he rasped. "Watch her." "I am," she whispered. "I see her." Jin exhaled shakily. Aaliyah moved fast. Muscle memory. From a lifetime of emergencies in small human ways. She boiled water on the stove, grabbed her old sewing kit, poured vodka over a needle and thread. She found towels, clean enough, and laid them out. Her breathing stayed steady, deliberate, even though her hands trembled with leftover adrenaline. She pulled a dish towel from a drawer and pressed it into his hand. "Bite it," she said. He obeyed without argument. Then he grabbed the couch cushion with his free hand, knuckles turning bone white. Aaliyah cut away the shredded fabric around his wound. The bullet hole was deep, a dark, ragged puncture that made her stomach clench. She'd never removed a bullet, but she'd stitched torn upholstery, butterfly-banded Jordan's chin, and once helped a line cook who sliced his hand open so badly bone showed. Crisis didn't scare her anymore, at least not in ways that mattered. She sanitized her hands as best she could. Vodka burned her skin. She poured more over the wound. Jin's entire body jerked, a muffled groan escaping around the towel clamped between his teeth. "Hold still," she whispered. "Please hold still." The needle touched flesh. Jin tensed. Aaliyah dug carefully, feeling for the shape of metal, feeling the soft give of muscle, feeling the resistance of scar tissue that hadn't had time to form. Blood welled hot and slippery under her fingers. Flashbacks flickered unbidden. Jordan split his lip at age 4, her shaking hands as she bandaged him, her husband shouting during their last fight, telling her she was too much. The silence after he left. The nights she cried quietly so Jordan wouldn't hear. She blinked hard, focused, breathed. After an eternity, her needle scraped something hard, got it. Slowly, carefully, she pulled. The bullet slid free with a sickening sound. Jin sagged in relief, the tension draining from his limbs. She didn't give him time to recover. She stitched the wound immediately. Tight, neat stitches, functional, not pretty. When she finished, she wiped the sweat from her forehead with her forearm. Jin's eyes fluttered open, fever bright. He looked at her with something like gratitude, or maybe desperation. "Aaliyah." He swallowed, voice barely audible. "The mother. Sujin's mother." Her heart clenched at the raw ache in his tone. "She died," he said, voice cracking for the first time. "Complications, 3 days ago." Aaliyah inhaled sharply. His chest trembled as he spoke. "Her family wants to take the baby. Say I'm not fit, father. Say I'm criminal." A humorless, self-loathing laugh escaped him. "They are not wrong." He turned his head, eyes landing on the tiny sleeping girl. His expression softened, so fiercely, so vulnerably, that Aaliyah's breath caught. "But she is everything left of her mother," he whispered. "Everything good left in this world." Silence settled. Heavy. Sacred. Aaliyah swallowed hard. "I understand," she said softly. And she did. Aaliyah called in sick the next day, her first sick day in 8 years. Even saying it felt surreal. She'd always been the one who showed up no matter what. Fever, work, migraine, work, car broke down, work after walking 2 miles. But now she had a half-dead stranger and a newborn in her apartment. She wasn't leaving. Jin slept most of the first 24 hours, feverish, mumbling in Korean, flinching in nightmares he never fully escaped. Aaliyah kept cold cloths on his forehead, changed his bandages, fed him warm broth when she could coax him awake. Between those moments, she held Soo-jin. Newborns demanded everything, relentless cycles of crying, feeding, sleeping, crying again. But Aaliyah found that her body remembered the small rocking motion, the gentle shushing, the slow rhythm of patting a tiny back until a burp came. She warmed bottles. She cleaned spit up from her shirt. She remembered how Jordan used to curl into her chest like this, tiny and trusting. In the quiet hours between midnight and sunrise, she felt something shifting inside her, something she thought she'd buried years ago. On the third night, Jin was lucid enough to sit upright for a little while. They sat together on the worn couch, the baby sleeping between them in a makeshift pillow nest. "This cry means hungry," Aaliyah murmured, half asleep, half running on instinct. "The quick little ones, diaper, that high-pitched one. She just wants to be held. Babies are complicated like that." Jin watched her not with suspicion or wariness anymore, but with a deep, quiet focus, as if trying to memorize every detail, as if she were an anchor in a storm he'd been drowning in for too long. "You're good, mother," he said softly. "Your son is lucky." Aaliyah's laugh came out tired and a little brittle. "My son thinks I don't understand anything and that I work too much. He's 15. Everything I do embarrasses him." Jin shook his head. "You show up, always. That's what matters." Her chest tightened, an ache both familiar and new. When was the last time someone had acknowledged that? Not her effort, not her exhaustion, but the simple truth beneath it. She kept going, even when she was bone-tired, even when no one thanked her. She swallowed hard. "Thank you," she whispered. Their eyes met. A long, lingering moment. A spark, dangerous, fragile, passed between them. She looked away first. Jordan returned early on the fourth day from his father's house, his key scraping loudly in the lock. Aaliyah froze mid-step, a bottle in her hand. Jin stiffened instantly, instincts snapping awake. Soo-jin, sensing tension, squirmed. The door swung open. Jordan stepped inside and stopped, dead. "Mom, what the hell?" His gaze darted from Jin, bandaged, pale, holding a baby, to his mother, standing protectively in front of them, then back again. Jin shifted on the couch, his posture changing with startling speed, from weakened patient to something sharp, coiled, ready to spring. His good arm tightened around the baby almost imperceptibly. Aaliyah moved before he could rise, placing herself between them with a small, firm gesture. "Jordan," she said, using the tone that once quieted tantrums and still had some power even now. "This is Jin and Soo-jin. They needed help." Jordan stared at her as though she'd broken some unspoken rule of survival. He saw everything. Bandages, bloodstains, expensive watch, tension humming in the air. He lowered his voice. "Mom, who is he really?" Jin held Jordan's gaze. Something old and dangerous flickered behind his eyes, but his expression stayed controlled. "Someone who made bad choices for good reasons," he said quietly. "Someone trying to do better." He glanced at Aaliyah, something softening. "Someone your mother helps even though she does not know me." Aaliyah didn't blink. "I know enough." Jordan looked to her, confusion sharpening into something else, fear, protectiveness, maybe even betrayal. "You know what?" he demanded. Aaliyah looked at the baby, at Jin, at the tiny life sleeping in this impossible moment. "I know he loves his daughter," she said simply. "I know he's trying to protect her. That's enough." Silence pressed in from all sides. The baby stirred, letting out a tiny sound, fragile and innocent amid the tension. Jin held her closer. Jordan stared, struggling to reconcile this scene with his world, and Aaliyah felt in her bones, that whatever thin line she'd crossed by bringing Jin and Soo-jin into her home, there was no crossing back. Tension thickened in the room, electric and unspoken. The next few days Jordan kept to himself, not talking much, but Aaliyah could still see the wariness in his eyes towards Jin. By the time he left back to his father's house, Aaliyah's apartment no longer felt like a sanctuary by day 6. It felt like a hideout, shadowed, cramped, air thick with worry. Jin could stand now, though every movement echoed in his stitched shoulder. The fever had broken 2 nights earlier, leaving him hollow-eyed and sharp again, seeing danger in corners where Aaliyah saw peeling paint. Outside, the December rain fell in relentless drizzles, whispering secrets against the apartment windows. Inside, the radiator hissed like an irritated serpent, working too hard for too little warmth. Aaliyah had just finished rocking Sujin into a light sleep, her body finding comfort in the small rhythms despite the growing knot of dread in her stomach. She eased the baby onto the folded blanket near the couch, her little chest rising and falling in soft, perfect breaths. Then, 3 sharp knocks, not pounding, not frantic, polite, controlled, professional. Aaliyah froze where she stood. Jin, who'd been adjusting the bandage on his shoulder, went still. His body stiffened. The color drained from his face so fast, Aaliyah thought he might faint. "Jin," she whispered. He didn't answer. His gaze had locked onto the door with a hunted focus Aaliyah had seen only in movies. People who'd run out of places to run. Another knock. This time, slower, measured, as if the rhythm itself were a warning. Sujin made a small, sleepy sound. Aaliyah's throat tightened. Jin moved silently to her side, his good hand lifting the baby into the crook of his arm. His grip was gentle, but there was a tremor in it. He nodded toward the closet. "Hide," she whispered. He shook his head once. Too late. Aaliyah stepped to the door, heart hammering so hard she felt it in her wrists, her throat, her teeth. She didn't open it immediately, peeked through the old brass peephole. 2 men, black suits, black umbrellas dripping with rainwater, clean shoes, no mud, meaning they'd come straight from a car, not the street, hair neat, faces blank, eyes cold. Something inside her chilled. They weren't police, they weren't social workers, they weren't anything good. She understood that instantly, instinctively, the way women learn threat like a second language. She cracked the door open no more than 2 inches, chain still engaged. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she asked, voice steady, polite, the kind of southern steel-laced tone she used on drunk warehouse guys who got too comfortable at the diner. The men spoke in Korean. She didn't know the words, but she didn't need translation. They weren't asking permission. They weren't explaining anything. Their tone said, "Move." Jin moved behind her, just far enough for them to glimpse him. Both men reacted with lethal stillness. Aaliyah's spine straightened, her breath sharpened. She blocked the door with her entire body, every inch of her radiating a simple message. No. One man, taller, cold-eyed, shifted his foot forward, pressing lightly against the door, testing, measuring her resistance. The other man glanced past her, dismissing her entirely, in the way men often did when they assumed a woman wasn't a barrier but background noise. They tried pushing the door a fraction wider. Aaliyah didn't move. Her blood simmered. Something deep in her, something that had been building for 6 days of sleepless nights, for 6 years of raising a son alone, for 38 years of being invisible, underestimated, reduced to ma'am or sweetheart or excuse me, miss, snapped into place. "I asked if I could help you." Louder now, a tone with weight. The men hesitated. Across the hall, Mrs. Patterson cracked her door open. She had her nightgown on and curlers in her hair, but her eyes were sharp, nosy, protective. At the far end of the hallway, Mr. Washington shuffled out to check his mail, even though the mailboxes had been empty for hours. Good. Let them watch. Let them witness. The men in suits recalculated. 2 men in an unfamiliar neighborhood, confronting a black woman in her own building, one where residents watched each other's backs. That was messy. Complicated. No longer quiet. One of them switched to English. "We're looking for someone," he said, tone smooth enough to make her skin crawl. "A child has been taken." "No child here but me and my son," Aaliyah said without missing a beat. "And our guest, who's recovering from a construction accident. Poor thing fell off scaffolding." Jin blinked behind her, surprised, impressed, maybe even amused through his fear. Aaliyah leaned closer to the crack in the door, meeting the man's gaze dead on. "You boys have a warrant? Any legal paperwork?" Her voice sharpened, slicing like glass. "Because this is private property, and you're making my neighbors nervous." Silence stretched. Mrs. Patterson's door opened another inch. Mr. Washington folded his arms. The hall tightened around the men in suits. Finally, the taller one dipped his head and stepped back. "We'll return," he said. "I know," Aaliyah replied. She shut the door in their faces before they could finish turning away. When the lock clicked into place, her knees nearly buckled. Jin exhaled, a ragged, quiet release. "They found us," he whispered. "Yeah," Aaliyah said, voice rough. "I know." Night settled heavy and suffocating. Rain lashed against the building, a relentless hiss that seeped under the windowsills and into Aaliyah's bones. The air tasted metallic, like storm water and fear. Jin sat at her tiny kitchen table, the overhead light flickering above him. It cast him in alternating shadow and illumination, like a man split in two, one half father, one half something darker, shaped by a past he couldn't outrun. Sujin slept in his arms, her small face soft, her breath warm against the crook of his elbow. Aaliyah couldn't look at them without feeling her heart tighten. It wasn't fair, how easily love could grow in the cracks of a crisis, how fast it could bloom without permission. Jin didn't look up when he spoke. "I have to leave." The words were soft, but they cut through her like a blade. Aaliyah stood at the counter, preparing tea she wasn't sure either of them would drink. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the ceramic cups. "Where will you go?" she asked. Jin kept his eyes on his daughter. "I have people, safe houses, places to hide." "And then what?" He swallowed, throat working hard. "Then I disappear, permanently." Aaliyah's stomach twisted. He spoke again, quieter. "But it means raising her in that world, the one I never wanted her to see, running, hiding, lying." He closed his eyes briefly. "I was trying to leave it, leave all of it." Aaliyah sat across from him, the wooden chair creaking under her weight. "What if you stayed?" she asked. Jin's eyes snapped open. For a moment the raw vulnerability in them startled her. Fear, guilt, hope, all tangled together like barbed wire. "Here?" His laugh was humorless. "Aaliyah, you don't understand what I am." She leaned forward. "I know exactly what you are." He flinched, expecting judgment. But her voice was steady, clear, true. "You're a father who loves his daughter," she said. "A man who walked away from a hospital because you didn't trust them to keep her safe. A man who risked his life to come here, to protect her." Jin shook his head, but she kept going. "And maybe," she swallowed hard, "maybe someone I've come to care about." He froze. "You and Sujin both," she finished softly. Jin stared at her, breath caught in his chest. "You barely know me." "I know plenty." Aaliyah's voice strengthened, rising like a tide. "I know you've never complained once about the pain, not even when I dug a bullet out of your shoulder. I know you sing to your daughter at 3 a.m. in a language I don't understand, but it still calms me. I know you fixed my leaky faucet one-handed because the dripping bothered you." Jin's mouth parted slightly. "I know you asked Jordan about his schoolwork," she said, voice trembling. "And you listened, really listened. You treated him like he mattered. Not many people do." Her eyes stung. "I know that when you look at me," her voice cracked, "you see me, not just a waitress, not the tired single mom doing her best, not someone to overlook." "Aaliyah," Jin's voice was rough, broken. "I spent 6 years being invisible." Her words spilled out like a confession. 6 years being the person who always shows up, who always handles things, who never asks for anything. I forgot what it feels like to be seen. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "You see me, Jin," she whispered. She reached across the table, slowly, as if crossing into dangerous territory, and took his free hand. His fingers curled around hers instantly, warm, strong despite the tremor. "And I see you," she said, "all of you, the man you were, the man you want to be, the father, the fighter, the survivor." She held his gaze. "That's not nothing," she whispered. "That's everything." For a long moment the world narrowed to the small circle of light above them, the steady drip of water outside, the warmth of his hand in hers, the fragile, sleeping baby tucked against his chest. Jin's shoulders shook once, just once, before he exhaled a long, trembling breath. "Aaliyah." He said her name like a prayer, or a warning, or both. He squeezed her hand. "I don't deserve this," he murmured. "Maybe not," she said softly. "But neither did I. And here we are." Silence swelled between them, thick with things neither of them were brave enough to say yet. Aaliyah stands at the front steps of her apartment building, the cracked concrete cold beneath her bare feet. The rain fell steady. She didn't have time for shoes, didn't think she needed them. Fear has a way of stripping you down to your bones anyway, leaving only what matters. In her arms, Sujin sleeps without making a sound. The baby's warmth seeps into her skin, a small, fragile furnace pulsing life into her chest. Aaliyah holds her close, protective, every maternal instinct stretched thin and sharp. The child's breath fans lightly against Aaliyah's throat. Tiny, steady exhales that tether her to the moment, keep her grounded even as danger closes in. The building behind her is awake. Every light on her floor burns bright. Figures cluster by windows and doorways. Mrs. Patterson in her faded robe. Mr. Washington leaning on his cane, jaw locked. The twins from 3B whispering fiercely. The usually quiet older couple from 4C standing shoulder to shoulder, determined. The world might forget people like them, like her, but they don't forget each other. They've all come because she called, because she asked, because for once Aaliyah let herself believe she wasn't alone. Headlights appear first, a fleet of black SUVs gliding up the cracked street like predators, engines low, controlled, no sirens, no flashing lights. These men aren't here for justice. They're here for removal. The cars stop in a coordinated line, doors open in slow unison. Men step out, black suits, immaculate, shoes that don't splash in puddles, blank expressions. This is a message. We're not afraid of you. But Aaliyah sees the flicker in their eyes the moment they notice the crowd behind her. They expected an easy extraction in a decaying apartment complex, not a neighborhood waking as one body, one force. Her breath fogs in the cold, her heart thunders. She shifts Sujin slightly, giving the baby more warmth, more shelter. She hopes the child won't remember any of this. She hopes her heartbeat is enough to anchor the infant in safety, even if it's borrowed safety. The suited men approach. The leader stands in front, older, silver at the temples, face carved by a life of commands and consequences. His gaze scans Aaliyah, the baby, the crowd, then lands on the man stepping out of the shadows behind her. Jin. He moves with a slight stiffness, the gunshot wound still healing, though he pretends it doesn't bother him. His right arm is bandaged. His left arm circles Aaliyah's waist protectively when he steps close, not touching her too tightly, but enough to say, "I stand with her." He's changed since the night she found him bleeding behind the diner. The pain is still there in his eyes, but softened by something she didn't expect. Hope. That fragile, terrifying thing he still doesn't know how to carry. The leader's stare hardens. His voice rolls out like distant thunder, first in Korean, a command that slices through the rain-heavy air. Jin's face tightens, his breathing shifts. Aaliyah doesn't speak Korean. She doesn't need to. The man is here to take his child. She steps forward, holding Sujin tighter, and her voice cuts the night. This child stays with her father. Her tone is steady, not loud, but it echoes through the crowd like a lit fuse. She feels the shift, neighbors straightening, leaning in, murmuring support. Even Mrs. Patterson mutters, "That's right," under her breath. The leader narrows his eyes. "Ma'am," he says in practiced English, "this situation does not involve you." "Oh, it involves me now." Her spine locks, her grip tightens, and it involves all of us. She gestures toward the community behind her. If you've got legal custody papers, you show them. If you don't, then what you're doing looks a whole lot like attempted kidnapping. A ripple runs through the crowd. Agreement, righteous anger, protective heat. Mr. Washington taps his cane once on the concrete, sharp, punctuating. The twins from 3B lift their phones, recording everything. The leader's jaw ticks. He glances at the cameras, at the dozens of phones now aimed at him. Too many eyes, too many witnesses. He switches back to Korean, muttering something clipped. This time, Jin answers. His voice is low, firm, almost unrecognizable from the man who whispered for help behind the diner 6 nights ago. The rain grows heavier. It drips from the leader's coat sleeve, darkening the fabric. It slicks Jin's hair to his forehead. It streaks over Aaliyah's cheeks, cold as fear, warm as defiance. The leader's gaze returns to Aaliyah, not hostile, not quite, but sharp with calculation. "You don't understand what you are protecting." Aaliyah steps down one stair, standing eye level with him. "I understand enough. You understand nothing about this man's past." "I understand he loves his daughter." Her voice trembles once, then steadies again. "And I understand dangerous men don't run bleeding into alleys begging strangers to save their babies." She sees the impact hit Jin's face, a soft shock, a wound of a different kind. The leader exhales slowly. This is unnecessary. The child belongs with her mother's family. Her mother is gone, Aaliyah says. The rain steals the break in her voice. And that baby needs the only parent she has left. A silence stretches. Then the man asks Jin in Korean, something slower, an edge of disbelief. Jin's shoulders roll back. He answers in Korean first, but the leader shakes his head and gestures at Aaliyah. So Jin switches to English. His voice is steady, raw. He asked if I am willing to give up everything, my position, my power, everything that was my life. He looks at Aaliyah, not the man. He thinks it is foolish. The leader steps closer, gaze slicing through the dark. And is it? Jin holds Aaliyah's eyes, not the man's, not the crowd's, just hers. I would give up everything false for something true. Aaliyah's breath catches. Rain masks the heat rushing to her face. Jin continues, louder now. I thought power meant control, but real power. His gaze drops to Soo-jin. Real power is being brave enough to be loved. The leader's face tightens. Something shifts in his expression. Not approval, but understanding, old and bitter. He turns to his men, speaks in Korean, a short command. And just like that, one by one, the suits step back. They retreat toward the SUVs. The leader lingers a moment longer, rain dripping off his jaw, then says quietly to Jin in English, "Do not let this be wasted." Then he leaves. Engines start, doors close. The SUVs roll away into the wet dark. The street grows quiet again, except for the drip of water from the roof and the low hum of relief across the crowd. Aaliyah sways. For a moment, her knees feel untrustworthy. Jin steadies her with his uninjured arm, his hand sliding to the small of her back. Soo-jin shifts softly, making a tiny coo that breaks the last brittle shard of tension. Mrs. Patterson clears her throat. Well, she says, voice shaking slightly, that was something. Mr. Washington tips his head. Aaliyah Johnson, he says, you've always had fight, just didn't think we'd see it quite like that. Aaliyah manages a breath, then a weak smile. Thank y'all, really. I couldn't have... We know, Mrs. Patterson says. That's why we came. The neighbors begin to drift away, one by one, murmuring good nights, promising to stay alert, offering casseroles and extra formula and whatever else they think might help. The building settles back into itself, the danger receding like a tide. Inside her apartment, Aaliyah finally lets her shoulders drop. The adrenaline drains from her bloodstream, leaving her shaky, hollow, human. Jin closes the door behind them. The lock clicks. The world outside becomes distant, washed away by softer sounds. The baby rustling in her blankets, the subtle hum of the fridge, the sigh of the old radiator trying its best. Aaliyah places Soo-jin in her crib. The baby yawns, scrunches her face, and drifts back to sleep. When Aaliyah turns, Jin is watching her. He's drenched from the rain, bandage soaked through, shirt clinging to his frame. There's a vulnerability in the way he stands, shoulders slightly forward, like he's waiting for her to tell him what happens now. She moves to him slowly. She reaches for the edge of his sleeve, checks his bandage with gentle fingers. You need to change this. You saved us, Jin says softly. You saved yourselves. Her voice catches. I just stood with you. You did more than that. His throat works. His hand rises, hesitates, then cups the side of her face, his palm warm despite the rain. The touch is careful, reverent, as if he's afraid she'll break or vanish. Aaliyah, he murmurs, I don't know how to live this life, this honest life, this being happy. Her eyes sting. Neither do I, she whispers. I forgot how a long time ago. They stand there in the dim glow of her apartment, the same dimness that used to fill her with loneliness, but now feels thick with possibility. No rushing, he says gently. No rushing, she agrees. But she leans into him anyway, slowly, fearfully, hopefully. His arms circle her, warm and strong. His forehead rests against hers. Their breaths mingle, soft, steady, grounding. They don't kiss, not tonight, maybe not for a while. But something passes between them, quiet and profound. A promise, a beginning. 3 months later, Atlanta hums with early summer heat. The warehouse district looks the same as always. Cracked pavement, graffiti on loading docks, the smell of oil and old rain, but everything feels different to Aaliyah. Softer, lighter. Like the world has stopped leaning against her and decided to stand beside her instead. She still works at Marlene's diner, but only day shifts now. Her hands still ache some mornings, arthritis whispering its reminders, but she has time to rest, to breathe, to be present. Jin works construction, legitimately. Turns out the man who used to run dangerous operations is a natural at coordinating crews, reading blueprints, keeping projects on track. Hard work suits him. Honest work suits him even better. He comes home tired and sweaty but smiling, a man building something real for the first time in his life. He lives across the hall now. Mr. Washington moved in with his daughter, offered Jin the lease. Officially, Jin and Aaliyah aren't dating. It's complicated, they tell people. But most evenings, Jin falls asleep on Aaliyah's couch after Sujin's final feeding, his head tilted back, mouth slightly open, exhaustion softening every line of his face. Jordan comes around too. He still doesn't trust Jin completely. Teenage boys rarely trust men who look like they've lived dangerous lives, but he respects him. Especially after Jin helped him rebuild his science project and taught him Korean curse words Aaliyah pretends not to hear. Sujin smiles at all of them, a bright, gummy smile that lights the room. She's growing fast, round cheeks, curious eyes, a giggle that cracks open something warm in Aaliyah's chest every time. Tonight, after dinner, the baby finally settles. Jordan heads out to a friend's place down the street. The apartment grows quiet except for the distant city noise drifting through the window and the occasional creak of settling wood. Aaliyah sits on the couch, the same couch where she dug a bullet out of Jin's shoulder 6 months ago, the same couch he fell asleep on while feverish, the same couch where their lives first tangled together in fear and fragile hope. Jin sits beside her, close, but not touching. He's freshly showered, hair damp, white t-shirt slightly wrinkled, his left arm draped across the back of the couch like he's trying to appear relaxed and failing. For a long time, neither speaks. Finally, Jin exhales. I still don't know how to do this. Do what? This. He gestures lightly around the apartment. A normal life. Peace. Not looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes. Aaliyah smiles faintly. You're doing fine. Some days I feel like I'm going to break it, like I'm holding something too delicate. Sujin? She asks, though she already knows the answer. You, he says quietly. Her breath catches. Heat blooms beneath her ribs. She tries to respond, but the words knot in her throat. He looks down, embarrassed. I don't mean to make this awkward, His voice softens. You saved me. Not just that night, every day after. That's not how I see it, she whispers. How do you see it? You showed me I wasn't invisible. He freezes. Then, slowly, he takes her hand, the one beginning to stiffen with arthritis, the hand she once thought no one would ever bother to hold again. His fingers close around hers with quiet certainty. Then we learn together, he says, slowly. No rushing, she whispers. No rushing, he echoes, but he doesn't let go of her hand, and she doesn't move away. In the next room, Sujin shifts and sighs softly in her sleep, safe, loved, protected. Outside, Atlanta hums its night song, sirens, engines, rain dripping from eaves, the pulse of a city that never truly rests. Inside, a tired waitress and a man trying to rebuild himself sit together on a worn couch, hand in hand, figuring out how to be whole again. Not in a grand cinematic sweep, not in a rush, but in the quiet, steady way real lives change. One breath, one choice, one night at a time.